welcome to this session on lifelong learning in an aging society. My name is Andreas Schleicher. I'm Director for Education and Skills at the OECD. And I'm joined by a fantastic panel here. Hiromi Sasai, Director from the Research Division of Lifelong Learning Policy at the Japan's National Institute for Educational Policy Research, who's going to start us off. Then we will be followed by Ricardo Guisado, who's Head of International Relations of the Fundación Tripartita para la Formación and Empleo, the Tripartite Foundation for Education and Employment, Training and Employment. And tripart here means actually, and that's I think a very important signal for Korea, bringing together government, employers, and unions in this kind of dialogue. And we have two discussants, Professor Kisung Lee, who's from the Department of Lifelong Education at Soongsil University, and Meeryoung Kim, who is Director of the Institute of Aging Society from Daegu University. The topic of, or the concept of lifelong learning is not new. You know, people started to talk about this in the 1970s, but many countries struggle with making this a reality for all. And the demands for lifelong learning increase every day. The pace of labor market transformations, of the kind of jobs that we have, is accelerating. So the need for people to keep up is absolutely crucial. If we do not manage that, older generations will become a liability of society. They will incur increasing social costs. If we manage that transition, we'll succeed in making everybody an asset of society and using the skills of people throughout over the life cycle. And the dynamic is accelerated through demographic aging. So far, Korea has escaped that trend in the sense that the population has grown, but in a couple of years' time, it's going to tip and the population will decline as it does in many industrialized societies. Actually, first is Japan. No country has seen an earlier trend towards that as Japan. So again, that adds an increased urgency on this. So let's move to the presentations. We have two presentations of 20 minutes each and then the discussions for 10 minutes, and that leaves you plenty of room for questions. You can write your questions on the notes, hand them over to the person collecting them, and then we'll try to respond to them as best as we can. Thank you. Hiromi, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hiromi Sasai from Japan. Actually, I work for the National Institute for Education Policy Research. My discipline is lifelong learning policy, especially adult education and community education. So, my title of my presentation is Social Participation and Learning Activity, focusing on Japan's aged people. Firstly, I will explain about current situation of Japanese aging society. As you know, the definition of aging society is the society where the ratio of a person above 55 years old forms 70% of whole population of the society. Based on this definition, we look at the current situation of the Japanese society. According to the data of 2013, 25.1% of the population is the aged people. It's one person for the one aged person for the 4 people is in Japanese society. And about 62% of the population with a person from the 15 years old to 64 years old. And about 13% of the population is a person under the 15 years old. Japan is the most advanced aging society. And in the future, Japan will progress the aging society more and more. when the when the future will be predicted, one person for 3 people is the aged people. In 2060, the 40% of the population is the aged people. This situation is very similar to the Korean situation. I mean, that, Japan and Korea is the most advanced aging society, I think. In this situation, the ratio of the living alone is very increasing. 50% of them will not participate in the community activities. That is, solitary household is increasing. It's based on the white paper of Aging Society 2013. It's by the Cabinet Office. Please see the next slide on the health situation. You can see the red line. The people would rather have the confidence on the health. And green line. Green lines are deep green line and the light green line. Deep green line means the people have the confidence in health. The total ratio of these people is about 72%. It is increasing a little. And it's proceeding to the next slide. It showed the income situation. It's the income of the 1 month. The green line is the income under the 100,000 yen. And so it's pretty the please see the 60 years old from 60 years old to 64 years old. When it will be seen by age, this chart indicates very important things. The age from 60 to 64, the percentage, the total ratio of these people is about 62%. And on the other hand, the 65 years old to 69 years old, the total, the ratio of this generation is the 53%. And it means I think it is necessary to live on to marriage the couples. 200,000 yen per 1 month in Japan. So that's why the majority of these aged people are not rich. That's a little bit poor people, I think. Next slide is on the social activity. most of them like watching TV. A majority of the aged people like watching TV. And some part of them want to exchange with, communicate with other people, and some part of them is also going to participate in the learning activity or community activity. They would like to get a place or chance for interaction or communication to the society. So please see the next chart. This is the ranking on the social activities. The number one, best one is appreciation to the cultural event. The Asian people like visual arts and performing arts or something, the entertainment activities. But they are the appreciation. The second one is a study circle or group activities. The third one is the participation in learning courses or something like that. And it's also on the social activities. Please see the 50 years old to the 59 years old. That's this generation. This generation likes the study for occupation. It's like a vocational education compared to the other generation. It's also on the social activities. The highest one is a green line. The aged people likes to have a sense of fulfillment in their life. It's very popular to the aged people. But there is a little difference between the age previous 60 years old and the age after 60 years old. These are the summary of the current situation of the aging society of Japan. So based on the above mentioned, I think I will show some key points of our lifelong learning policies. The first one is to promote the participate in their community, and the second one is to promote to communicate the other people. The third one is to promote the practice creative activity. And the aged people has the average, the tendency of the aged people has the small income, and the aged people was retired, they economize their daily life, and they have little mobility, and they are very interested in their health, and they like to get a sense of fulfillment. Based on the increase of the living alone that I mentioned, the policy for the promotion of the participation as follows. First one is the conduct and the outreach activity for the aged people, and provide the chance to the practice the cheerful activity in order to enrich their daily life. And policy for the promotion of the communicating each other based on the lack of the relationship among the community people. First policy is to promote the participating in the community in terms of the improvement of accessibility, such like time, space, and the cost. And to provide the chance to exchange each other in the public space, such like a community learning center. And the policy for the age, the third one, the policy for the creation of the fulfillment based on their needs and experience. We just considered promoting the organized study circle through learning class activity or volunteer activity. And second one, to support creative practical activity, such like a volunteer activity or agriculture activity. And third one is to provide the chance to talk with community people on their experience. The fourth policy, policy for the increase of their income and fulfillment based on their needs and experience. Provide a learning class on the entrepreneurship for the aged people and support monetary activity in terms of the income generation in addition to lifelong learning. Actually, recently, the community business is very getting popular, and many aged people are interested in the community business. So people interested in the community business, in the volunteer and monetary work, this is so meaning for producing a sense of fulfillment and securing employment and improving income in aging generation. Good practice on entrepreneurship or community business is to promote the participating in the community in terms of improvement of accessibility and organizing the study group, and provide the knowledge and skills on the entrepreneurship, and to support the study group by providing the workspace for the business, etc. The problem of the aging society is the problem of the youth employability. I mean, according to the newspaper yesterday, the percentage, the ratio of the youth, non-regular employment is increasing. It's reached to about 40% in Japanese case. It's so serious problems. Government will work out the policy for the youth regular employment, of course. But aged people should participate in the opening or the beginning, the community business. We have some example for the community business of the aged people. Examples. Some aged people engaged in the work to cook and distribute the lunch box for the older aged people of the living alone. The second example is some people engaged in the work, the people gathering and to make and sell strap for the cellular phone. It's a small things for such like accessory for cellular phone. That's some examples for the community business by the aged people. So I'd like to summarize my presentation. Two key words on the lifelong learning policy. The one of them is the participating. The second is the bonding with the other people, other community people. And third is voluntary or mandatory working in the community. In Japan, many companies, as you know, many companies keep the lifelong employment, lifelong employment system. Still now, however, the labor market is becoming fluidized. From now, lifelong learning policy for progress will shift to the other step, such like securing the lifelong employability. It could be needed from now on. It is my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And I was actually struck by the data you showed on a genuine interest in the older generation and sort of what you saw broadening their horizon, actually keeping up in learning. At the very same time, your data on earnings are not very encouraging. I mean, the low earnings of older generations suggest that some of those skills actually do not translate into increased economic activity. So there's more to be done in terms of policies to create an environment in which the acquisition of skills also then has a return. But you've also highlighted, I think, a whole range of interesting policies in this, where actually government tries to sort of capture that potential and turning this into an asset for not just the economy, but also the society. So I thought that was really interesting. Ricardo, you're next.
Thank you. I would like to thank the organizers of the Global Human Resources Forum and the Quebec for their invitation to the Tripartite Foundation for Training and Employment to take part in this event. When the director of the foundation asked me to come in his place, two things came to my mind. The first was that I would be turning 50 in a few weeks' time, and I was going to begin to form part of the aging society. The second was that I would be making my first visit to Korea, the original home of Taekwondo. I practiced Taekwondo for 16 years, and with the permission of my sensei, I achieved a black belt. But why should I mention that here? Because by associating the subject of this talk with these two facts, I realized that my body no longer responded as it used to. I haven't practiced Taekwondo for 20 years, I'm sorry, even though I still do quite a lot of sport. But when my children ask me from time to time to give them a demonstration, I notice that my legs are not accessible anymore, and my reflexes are not as fast as they were. But is it due to my age or to a lack of practice? The answer is both, but much more due to the lack of practice. The same could be said about our ability to work, to learn, and to train. Before going to the heart of my talk, let me first set out a few considerations. Improvement in the general population's health and social condition and scientific progress in reproductive health and well-being have a considerably enhanced quality of life and life expectancy in developed countries. All this, together with the arrival at retirement age of the baby boom generation and the low birth rate, mean that our society are facing a situation of fast generational aging. The consequences of this process on the job market are highlighting the need to implement policies that make social security and pension system sustainable in the weight on an ever smaller workforce. We are thus facing an ever more elderly workforce, and therefore one that includes a large number of people over 50 years of age actively participating in the labor market. In a not too distant future, we'll be living in a society that we shouldn't call elderly, but certainly much older than at present. I say that because the concept of age is being transformed more and more. Yes, okay. Age is an individual characteristic, but how can it be described? We could divide it into 4 types. Chronological age, determined by our date of birth. Biological age, in relation to our degree of aging. Psychological age, determined by the psychological traits of each age group. Social age, marked by economic, employment, and family circumstances. The most interesting thing is that of all these ages, there is only one that we can do nothing about: our chronological age. We can do so, however, in the other 3 to a greater or lesser degree. We can read in several articles in the press that advances in molecular biology will presumably enable us in not so many years from now to extend our life expectancy considerably. So, that it makes sense to consider stopping our work activities at the age of 65 if we live until 100, 120, or even much more, as indicated in the article in the chart. That hasn't happened yet and is only an untested hypothesis, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take into account. The reality we have is that since the retirement age was placed at 65 by Ms. Bismarck in Germany in 1889, the employment panorama, life expectancy, and working conditions have considerably improved. Let me show you some forecasts for Spanish social panorama. The combination of a longer life expectancy, the increase in the number of pensioners, and the aging of the population will be an explosive cocktail. I think it's probably the same in Korea. Back in 1870, life expectancy in Spain did not reach 30 years of age. Last year, life expectancy rose to 82.98 years on average, 5 years more for women than for men. I think we have one of the most high level of life expectancy in the world. According to the forecasts of the Bank of Spain, for 2050, the aging population will continue apace without the influx of immigrant population or the renewed fertility rates being able to stop that. The OECD has recommended that Spain should postpone its retirement age to 67. This measure is being implemented gradually until 2027. And all this without considering any possible scientific advances that might extend life expectancy. With a greater life expectancy, we would be necessary to begin by redefining the term aging employees. This is an expression that is far from clear. Thus, we may say that age is a social invention, But from a training standpoint, we have to consider aging workers to be those in the second half of their working life, which, as we are seeing, is beginning to get longer. So, there is one clear conclusion. With the improvement in living condition, older people have to remain active from both a productive standpoint and also a personal point of view. Here, lifelong learning has a fundamental role to play. But are we ready to go on learning after 50? How physiological changes affect our ability to learn and to solve problems? From a biological perspective, our brains are ready to go on learning after 50. Although it's true that physical and cognitive deterioration occurs after a certain age, this process is slower than is assumed. Recent neurological studies have shown that contrary to what was believed until very recently, our brains generate neurons and neural interaction throughout life. In the words of my colleague, David Bainbridge, people slow down in their generation of ideas after 20. However, he considers human beings at 40 and 50 to be brilliant at planning and coordinating tasks, at managing long-term projects, and at filtering out relevant information. In this period of our life, we maximize the skill set we refer to as a wisdom. We deal better with our emotions and our cognitive resources. The old saying that you can teach an old dog new tricks is no longer accepted reality. Nonetheless, we have a stereotype vision of older workers. This vision classifies them as resistant to change or training and as inflexible. But things are changing, and companies are also beginning to value the greater loyalty and experience of these workers. As Birgit Lager and Regina Mulder pointed out, reflecting the opinion of other specialists in a book published by CEDEFOP, the learning process consists from a cognitive standpoint in the acquisition and improvement of knowledge about pre-existing cognitive structure. According to this, workers with more experience would be better prepared for learning than young people. From a more active perspective, learning is an interaction between experience and surroundings. This experience will have two dimensions to it: experience acquired during life and experience for starting to learn. Learning processes at the workplace depend on the characteristics of the context, specifically of the job task and of organization. Therefore, determinants of learning at individual level, such as older workers' experience, motivation, and competence, and organizational level, characteristic of the workplace job tasks, have to be part of the theoretical framework. As well as the general importance of individual learning biography, the following aspects are central. The individual life story gains importance at advanced age. Performance differences within a group of people at the same age are more common than between different ages. The social status, as well as the professional and social overall context, are crucial for performance motivation. A cognitive loss of power at advanced age is mostly the consequences of mental passivity and not simply caused by age. Biological age plays a more important role on a psychomotoric level. It amounts to a general deceleration at advanced age. Routines can compensate a decreasing working speed. Increasing experience can affect the performance potential, both positively and negatively, depending on the type of experiential knowledge. Is learning a question of attitude or aptitude for older individuals? Is that only for the workforce or also for executive? As I pointed out earlier, the vision we have about older workers is changing. Demographic changes are notably influencing that vision. Even the desire to retire is now somewhat less attractive. After decades in which older workers were considered more costly and were replaced by younger, less well-paid employees, there is beginning to be room now from other policies. But it is important to have a change of attitude for both parts, the workforce and also the human resources directors in companies. On the other hand, lifelong learning has emerged as a new principle and a new challenge. This requires a new approach and a new challenges, a different organization of training activities, and a new vision. They will have to bear in mind the benefits of learning for both the company's workforce and their executive. The policies applied by companies' human resources department with respect to age have a great impact on their structure, their behavior, and their profits. We have to remember that the way older people work to learn is different, perhaps slower, but also more organized and reflexive. In addition, they are usually more identified with the company, making them engage more with the training they receive. Companies have to adapt to the needs of this group by increasing their time off or shortening their working hours. All the experts point that important of all the workers' attitude towards training. In a world with such technological and work-related changes, there can be no doubt that training is the best tool to help workers to adapt to the firm's needs. Thus, their attitudes will be fundamental for them to be able to learn. If workers do not identify the usefulness of training received, they will not learn, and the same could be said to a greater extent about older workers. All the workers need to have this open attitude towards the training they receive, and the following factors need to be taken into account for this to happen. It's important a clear objective, a precise definition of training action, visualization of the usefulness of the action in question, a flexible method that adapts to their circumstances, a suitable timetable in terms of both duration and their normal working hours, provision of transparent information about the courses, incentives that add to the sense of the training. These do not have just economy. They can also be in form of recognition or enable them to feel valued. There are also important psychological aspects that must be taken into account, such as anxiety, insecurity, and the recognition of their experience. Older workers are, in general, highly motivated to take part in training. No one can doubt that in the developed countries, older people with a greater life expectancy will want to continue working. They will want to maintain their lifestyle and to feel satisfied with the work they do. Without financial pressure, few people would spontaneously choose to stay in employment at old age. In contrast, the main reason for leaving working life is health and a general reduction on physical condition. People with higher level of training are, generally speaking, the ones with the least interest in retiring. I highlighted in a recent study from University of Colorado, mortality is closely correlated to the levels of education and training. This reciprocal relationship between health and training must also be taken into account in elderly workers. Physical exercise is directly related to our cognitive and mental health, and it would be interesting for training activities in company to be accompanied also by promotion of physical exercise among this collective. Deferring the age of retirement and at the same time providing training for workers is also an attitude that depends on the companies, governments, and society itself. Are there differences between men and women? We are now in the women revolution in the world. People's outlook on the work and training changes according to the different stage of workers' life. There is no doubt the physiological or reproductive differences and the perception of family responsibility may mark major differences between men and women in the workplace. Human beings go through two stages of life that are not present in other animal species. One is adolescence, and the other is maturity. According to some sociologists, this is one of the reasons for the evolutionary development of humans. After the conclusion of the period for having children and bringing them up, humans have more than 20 years ahead of us in which we can look forward to good physical and mental health. That has enabled older generation to help younger ones enormously and in their development, a phenomenon that does not happen in other species. At age 40, 50, women feel more secure and settled in their relationships and are moving towards more autonomy. Men we are moving in the opposite direction as career tax demands diminish. We are able to become more sensitive to our personal life and to our internal psychological needs. These circumstances, explained in a greater detail more extensively in a set volume, must be taken into account when planning people's working life and their training. We have seen women who are initially more conservative become more ambitious than men later on, and vice versa. Bearing these processes in mind, government and legislation must pay close attention to the different periods in people's lives and favor work-life balance. Maternity or paternity leave may also provide opportunities that could coincide with a period of training through agreement with the workforce. I don't wish to overlook a reference to the ever more relevant role of women in the labor market of Spain. The slide, you can see some differences. In the top, the men, the lower place, the women. Women with lower levels of qualification over the age of 35, just like men, suffer a decline in their training activity, albeit somewhat less marked than in their male counterparts. However, looking at people with a slightly higher level of qualification, while training activity decline at 35 years of age among men, it increases among women 45 until 45, after which the decline is less pronounced than in men. At medium levels of education and training, taking into account their inclusion in the workplace, The fall in training activity for women is also slightly less marked than among men after 35. At higher educational level, that's the revolution. However, women receive more training in principle compared to men up to age 35, and the subsequent decline is somewhat more marked, probably due to later maternity, and is practically equivalent to that of a man after the age of 40. I don't have much more time, and I don't want to close without mention briefly sectors, category, intergenerational relations, governmental policies, or robotization. Which sectors of economy are better prepared and more receptive to on-the-job training? And which employment categories? As we have seen previously, physical and cognitive deterioration associated with the age does not have the same impact on all sectors, nor on all kinds of employment. One of the reasons why older workers decide to leave work is not so much their mental as their physical health. And we can see in this chart from the European Fundación for Improvement of Living and Working Conditions. With respect to training, a review of the training monitored by the Tripartite Foundation, my institution, throughout the training subsidy system shows a sudden drop on training activity among workers over 35 years of age. According to our data, that would not cover the whole panorama of training in Spain, unfortunately, the decline is greater in manufacturing and retail than in tourism or agriculture. Training activity also varies with each sector depending on the level of qualification. It is striking that people in the manufacturing industry with primary education qualification are the ones with the smoothest decline between 35 and 55 years of age. This is probably due to the needs of the companies in these sectors. Thus, we must bear in mind which sector the workers belong to and which activity they are participating if we want to stay ahead of the training needs at 45 or over. What should intergenerational labor relations be like when it comes to training? In a future, older employees will represent a majority over younger ones. It will be necessary to take intergenerational relationship into account. The experience and wisdom of the older workers may be of a great assistance for those starting work. This role will strengthen in training system based on dual system in which apprentices are mentored by tutors, like in Germany, like in Switzerland, like in Austria. If the relationships between workers in different generations is respectful and cooperative with the labor relation, then the labor relation will be very fruitful for companies. Older workers will be able to provide the younger colleagues with a rounder and more flexible perspective, while young people will be able to help or complement their elders in the use of new technologies. Are governments prepared to apply training policies for those over 45? It is important for government to participate actively in the policies aimed at the training for older people by adapting legislation and providing this collective with more information. It's also important to raise awareness among the population about the need of lifelong training adapted to the different phases of our employment life. There are institutions deeply involved in these subjects, such as Eurofound, but I'm not sure that governments are aware of this reality that we will encounter in our workplace in a very near future. If training is well planned and of high quality and given throughout individuals' working life, it will become the fundamental tool to be able to sustain these work-related policies. And just to conclude, it should be pointed out that we are living in a period of technological revolution with tremendous impacts on the job markets and training requirements. Yet, many people are already suggesting another real revolution in robotics that will have decisive influence in how and how long we work. What is going to happen a few years down the road when robots take over many manual jobs and are more efficient in energy and productivity terms than humans? We will find ourselves living in a society in which life expectancy is long and where leisure time is very important. Will training not therefore play a fundamental role, and not just from an employment point of view? The answer is of course, it will. And not just in the work dimension, but also in our personal life. We will live for more years, and training and learning will be essential for our ability to adapt even when we are elderly. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ricardo. And I must say, I found this presentation enormously optimistic and upbeat. I mean, the fact that we can change our biological age, that we can change our psychological age, change the social age. And you know, as a physicist, I would even argue maybe we can also change the chronological age, you know? The theory of relativity is even optimistic there. I mean, what we have seen here shows that we should be doing a lot better on adult learning and lifelong learning than where we actually are. I mean, the data that we have on the actual incidence and intensity of learning throughout life, lifelong, life-wide learning, paints a very bleak picture, but what is possible seems, I think, to be sort of pointing to a very different direction. So I think this is a fantastic kind of contribution. Let's move to our discussants. Professor Lee, please.
Good evening. My name is Kisung, Lee Kisung, from Soongsil University. Now I'm on sabbatical leave, so I'm staying in Jeju National University, but I flew here to discuss for these two famous presenters. After my discussion, I fly to Jeju Island. So to save my time, I will read my script about my discussion. It's my great honor to discuss two presenters, but actually, till yesterday, I couldn't get access to Mr. Guisado's presentation material, so just 2 pages of abstract, I don't think it's enough to prepare my discussion. So I focused my discussion on Mr. Sasai's paper. Sorry for that. So I will briefly review Mr. Sasai's paper and add my personal viewpoints. Well, the theme of track C is the linkage between learning and or education and employment. And session 4 focuses on lifelong learning in an aging society. Because the topic is about lifelong learning and aging society, I found some senior citizens in this room. As you know, learning society, aging society, lifelong learning, It's very simple and common terms, but it's very tough to discuss because it has lots of different facets. Well, let's get back to Mr. Sasai's presentation. He showed what an aging society or an aged society looks like by introducing Japanese situation. 2 years ago, Japan has already become a post-aged society. That means the ratio of people of age 65 and older in 2013 was 25.1%. They forecast that this percentage will increase to be 40% by 2060. The progress of aging in Japan brought about several issues, as you heard. Firstly, the increase of solitary household. In Korean, 독거노인 maybe. Secondly, the decrease of confidence in their health. Actually, we are getting old. We are worrying about our health. Thirdly, the decrease of personal income. And lastly, the increase of necessity of social interaction. As one of the solutions, he suggests learning activity for the aged, which was based on broad survey results. Aged people appreciate a sense of fulfillment in their lives, to use their experiences and skills to contribute community development and so on. Now, if we go back to the 4 issues caused by aging in Japan and look at the policies that the Japanese government has formulated in order to tackle these issues. First, they have been promoting more active participation of citizens, senior citizens, especially for the increasing single-person household. Single senior citizen household. Second, they are promoting communicating among senior citizens. Thirdly, they are trying to create an environment where the aged population could feel a sense of fulfillment and achievement in life based on their needs and experience. And fourth, to increase their income based on their needs and experiences. It's very important to have money when you are getting older. Not only for daily lives, daily living, but also you have to scatter some money for your grandchildren. Then they will like you better. These policies and efforts, such as supporting study groups for senior citizens, providing workplaces and work opportunities, and furthermore, providing them with knowledge and skills for entrepreneurship, show Japan's viewpoint on lifelong education in the face of an aging society. Mr. Sasai mentioned that Korea and Japan also has difficulties in aging or aging society. I mean, lots of issues rise when our peoples are getting older. But I think Korea is more serious than Japan. Korea and Korea's aging society or senior citizens could gain some insight based on Japan's policies and practices. However, there could always be elements that distinguish the aging situation of Japan from that of Korea. And because of these possibly practical and realistic differences, the process of applying the practices of Japan to the aging society of Korea must be carefully and thoroughly examined. In order to do so, let's first take a look at some distinguished features and characteristics of the aging situation of Korea. First of all, in year 2000, the percentage of citizens of age 65 and older increased to be 7.2%, which also brought us into the range of what the United Nations determined to be an aging society. Secondly, studies predict that by 2019, the Korean society will become an aged society, and by 2020, further reach the range of a post-aged society. A side note would be that the predicted year that Korea reaches an aged society and a post-aged society, it used to be 2022 and 2032. The speed of Korean society becoming a post-aged society is outrunning statistical predictions. Which brings me to the third point. Korea is predicted to become the world's fastest country to reach the stage of an aged society from an aging society. The anticipated time required for France to become an aged society from an aging society is 115 years. For the United States of America, 71 years. For Canada, 65 years. Swiss, 52 years. The United Kingdom, 47 years. Japan, 24 years. And Korea, only 19 years. Last but not least, Korea is also ranking number one in its speed to reach a post-aged society from an aged society. Japan is predicted to take 36 years, while Korea is predicted to take 26 years to become a post-aged society from an aged society. Well, this is not an academic conference. This is a forum, open forum for getting idea or some information to know about the worldwide trends or something. So I add my ideas that's not based on my research. Taking into consideration these factors of the Korean aging society, we could derive a few realistic directions in which we could start tackling the aging situation. First of all, we must also conduct a wide study that reveals the needs of senior citizens, like Mr. Sasai mentioned. In our society, aging is rapidly proceeding, but as I know, we didn't conduct a comprehensive survey what our senior citizens in need, or what kinds of activities or what kinds of things they should be provided. Second, we must design and deliver various learning and education activities based on consideration on the physical and psychological characteristics of the senior citizens. Mr. Sasai gave an example of study group, but not only study group, we needed to encourage them to organize lots of different groups or organizations which provide leisure time, relaxation, or other. Okay? And thirdly, find niches for senior citizens when their education and employment is an interactive process for the seniors to look for ways of earning income. Well, to study and gaining income is better. To learn something and gaining money is more better. Right? Finally, lifelong education in an aging era should not only focus on senior citizens, but broaden its focus on the well-being of all members of the aging society. Well, lifelong learning for aging society usually give you some idea. Well, that lifelong education is for aged people, but not that. We should prepare our future. Soon we will be aged people, right? Okay, I will finish my discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. finally, Professor Kim, your reflections, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Meeryoung Kim. It is my pleasure to have an opportunity to discuss about famous speaker's presentation. But since I received the papers on this Tuesday, so I didn't have much time to prepare in English, so I'm gonna speak in Korean. 네, 안녕하세요. 제가 이제 한국말로 여러분들에게 토론을 말씀드리겠습니다. 훨씬 귀 안 꽂고 들으셔도 될 테니까요. 우선 히로미 사사이 선생님 내용을 잠깐 살펴보면은요. 일본은 이미 초고령 사회가 됐다고 이야기하시고요. 65세 이상 인구가 20%를 훨씬 넘어서 지금 25.1%로 4명당 1명이 노인이라고 합니다. 세계에서 가장 빠른 속도로 고령화가 이미 이제 진행됐고 초고령 사회가 된 나라가 일본이죠. 제가 예전에 일본을 방문했을 때 보니까 그 호텔에 전부 노인분들이더라고요. 그래서 일본의 고령화가 참 심각하구나 하는 것을 느꼈는데 이분들이 물론 여행 오셔서 리저 활동을 즐기시는 분이었겠죠. 2060년이 되면 40%가 노인이라고 하니까 진짜 노인 왕국이라고 할 수 있겠습니다. 한국은 아까 우리 이 교수님 조금 인구학적인 그 인구의 고령화에 대해서 말씀해 주셨는데요. 거기 이제 겹치지 않는 부분을 제가 좀 준비를 한 것 같습니다. 2026년에 이제 20%가 되죠. 그래서 초고령 사회가 되고 2030년이면 24.3% 해서 인구의 4분의 1이 노인이 된다고 합니다. 그래서 우리가 이제 이미 우리보다 빠르게 고령화를 시작한 일본을 상당히 많이 벤치마킹하고 있죠. 그러면서 이제 히로미 사사이 선생님께서 그 노인의 문제를 이제 지적을 해주셨는데요. 주거 문제, 건강 문제, 수입 문제, 사회 참여 등으로 이제 집어주셨어요. 그런데 주거 문제를 보면 인구의 고령화와 더불어서 한국도 마찬가지로 독거노인 문제가 굉장히 심각하죠. 이것은 현대 가족이 핵가족 제도로 인한 문제, 또 결혼을 안 하고 이제 독신으로 사는 사람들이 많죠. 그런 문제, 또 남녀의 평균 수명이 짧다 보니까 대부분이 여성들이 남편분이 좀 나이가 많잖아요. 그런데 7년 정도 오래 사니까 10년은 돕고 혼자서 생활을 하셔야 되니까 그런 문제도 있고요. 이런 여러 가지 문제들을 생각해 볼 수가 있을 것 같습니다. 그런데 이제 그 독거의 가장 심각한 문제는 뭐냐면 이제 고독이죠. 고독, 소외감, 또 이로 인한 우울증, 또 그것으로 인한 정신질환, 또 거기에 따라서 자살도 생기고요. 또 혼자 돌아가셨는데 뭐 몇 달 동안 아무도 알지 못했던 이런 고독사들, 혼자 외롭게 돌아가시는 이런 문제들이 제기가 되어서 저는 이 아까 4가지 말씀하신 것 중에 이 노인의 주거 문제도 상당히 우리가 좀 더 신경을 써야 되는 문제라고 생각을 합니다. 그의 사회 참여 문제도 많이 설명해 주셨는데요. 이제 노인들이 주로 TV를 보고 또 일부는 다른 사람들과의 관계를 맺고 또 학습 활동을 한다든지 지역사회 활동을 한다고 설명하고 계시는데요. 이것은 일본도 스페인과 마찬가지로 이제 배우는 것과 그 레크레이션이 노인들에게 상당히 중요하다라고 생각을 합니다. 이거는 뭐 한국도 마찬가지겠죠. 그 발표하신 것을 보면 연령과 관계없이 그 스터디 서클이 2번째로 높은 수준인데요. 이것을 통해서 아까 그 3집단으로 나누셨는데 뭐 50대, 60대, 65세 이상 3그룹이 모두 2번째로 이게 높았어요. 그래서 이걸 보면 노인들도 참 배움에 대한 욕구가 강하다는 것을 알 수가 있었습니다. 또한 사회적인 활동으로는 인생에서의 성취를 가장 중요시하고 있었죠. 그래서 자신의 경험이나 기술을 활용하고 싶어 하는데, 즉 그 자신의 인적 자원을 활용하고 싶은 욕구가 이제 강함을 알 수가 있었습니다. 그래서 나이가 들면서 친구 관계도 굉장히 중요하지만 친구 관계보다는 오히려 그 자신의 성취에 대한 강한 욕구를 보이는 것을 보면서 그 에릭슨의 자아 통합감, 에릭슨 이론의 자아 통합감이라든가 그 메슬로의 욕구 충족의 그 마지막 단계인 자아 실현이 생각났었습니다. 그런데 이제 한 가지 제가 좀 약간 한 가지 질문은 배우는 것은 이제 사회적인 활동, 소셜 액티비티라고 하셨는데 사회적인 활동을 통해서 이제 배우는 것은 사회적인 활동뿐만이 아니라 우리의 그 인지 활동, 즉 이 노년기에 적응과 관계된 그런 심리적인 측면과도 많은 연관이 있는 것 같습니다. 또 교육 활동과 사회 참여 측면에서 보면 노인 교육을 통한 이런 지역 내 활동, 이제 뭐 자원봉사라든가 일자리 창출 이런 것들은 한국에서도 지금 노인 일자리 사업을 상당히 많이 활발하게 이제 진행을 해서 한시적이긴 하지만 지역에서 이제 뭐 그렇게 페이는 많지 않지만 자원봉사에 준하는 그런 일자리로 노인들이 굉장히 높은 만족감을 보이고 있습니다. 그 마지막에 이제 그 서머리 요약에서 화살표를 해놓으셨는데 제가 약간 좀 이해를 제대로 했는지 모르겠는데 이제 그 참여 후에 뭐 결속 본딩 하시고 그다음에 자원봉사 뭐 돈 일 이렇게 설명하셨는데요. 제가 볼 때는 사회 참여의 하나로 자원봉사를 하면서 이제 일도 하고 돈도 벌고 그러면서 결속력이 생겨서 노인들이 이렇게 사회 통합감을 가지면서 이렇게 좀 만족감을 느끼는 것이 아닌가 하는 생각을 해봤습니다. 예, 그 히로미 사사이 연자 분께서 하신 거는 여기까지 토론이고요. 그 다음에 이제 그 리카르도 선생님께서 하신 그 라이프롱 러닝 인 에이징 소사이어티에서 이제 스페인의 경우인데 훌륭한 발표 내용을 잘 들었고요. 뭐 토론이라기보다 제가 발표를 들으면서 느낀 것을 좀 말씀드리겠습니다. 고령화 시대와 평생 학습 이제 이번 우리 그 주제이기도 한데요. 어느 나라나 뗄래야 뗄 수 없는 문제죠. 기대 수명이 증가했기 때문에 그 남은 20년, 30년의 그 긴 여생을 이제 새로운 삶에 새로운 그런 삶과 환경에 잘 적응을 해야 되는데 그러한 적응을 위해서는 우리가 역량을 갖춰야 되는데 그것은 교육을 통해서 가능하겠죠. 그러면 왜 고령화 시대의 평생 학습이 중요한가? 이제 우리의 은퇴 나이를 생각해 보면 그 답이 나오는데요. 아까 발표하실 때 은퇴 연령이 19세기 비스마르크가 정한 것을 21세기에 사는 우리들이 그것을 이제 그대로 따라 하는데 이 관점이 달라져야 할 것이다. 시대의 흐름에 따라서 지금 국가마다 은퇴 연령이 변화됐죠. 미국은 이미 은퇴 연령이 없어졌고 일본은 이제 작년에 65세로 됐고요. 그다음에 독일도 67세. 그다음에 영국도 이제 점차 없어지는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 그런데 OECD 국가 중에서 한국이 유일하게 은퇴 연령이 가장 낮아서 60도 아니고 56세예요. 더군다나 이제 강제 은퇴까지 합치면 53점 몇 세인데 최근에 이제 2013년에 고용상 연령 차별 금지법이 통과가 되어서 내년부터 300인 이상 기업은 60세, 이제 후년부터는 300인 미만 기업도 60세 뭐 이렇게 되지만 아직도 OECD 평균에도 못 미치는 실정이죠. 그런데 앞으로는 이 연금 수령 연령이 지금 5년에 1세씩 2008년부터 시작을 해서 이제 지금 2013년에는 61세죠. 5년에 1세씩 높아지기 때문에 나중에는 65세까지 올라가는데 연금을 받는 시기와 은퇴하는 연령이 다르기 때문에 이제 신춘군기라고 하죠. 이때는 도대체 무엇을 먹고 살 것인가를 고민해야 되기 때문에 앞으로는 점차 또 다른 OECD 국가와 마찬가지로 서서히 높아지지 않을까 하는 생각이 듭니다. 리카도 씨께서 발표하신 것 같이 나이는 사회적인 발명품이라고 하셨는데요. 저도 굉장히 동의를 하고 제가 연령에 대한 연구를 또 좀 했었는데 그 인간의 수명이 증가함에 따라서 이 나이에 대한 개념이 달라져야 된다. 우리가 환경에 적응을 하듯이 우리의 나이에 대한 이제 그 크로놀로지컬 에이지, 그 우리의 뭐 만으로 된 나이는 어떻게 변경시킬 수가 없지만 거기에 대한 개념 정의를 다르게 하면 노인이 70 몇 세부터 뭐 80세부터 노인일 수도 있고요. 예를 들면 예전에 평균 수명이 60세가 되기 이전에 성인 나이를 20으로 치면 나머지 40이 남잖아요. 거기 가운데를 중간으로 하면 이제 40대가 중년이 되죠. 요즘 같이 인간 수명 100세 시대면 성인을 20살부터로 치면 20을 빼면 이제 80이 남는데 그 중간이면 40이니까 더하면 60. 그래서 한 2년 전부터 매스컴을 통해서 죄송합니다. 매스컴을 통해서 신중년이라는 이런 용어가 대두되기 시작을 했어요. 삶의 그런 유형, 라이프 스타일은 젊은 중년 40대, 50대와 같지만 나이는 노인이다. 예전에 노인이다 해서 60세부터 이제 75세까지를 이야기를 합니다. 그래서 기대 수명에 따라서 중년의 나이는 당연히 달라져야 한다. 그러니까 중년이라는 것은 가운데를 의미하니까 오래 살면 그만큼 그 중년의 나이도 높아지는 게 당연하겠죠. 그렇기 때문에 이제 거기에 맞는 lifelong education이, lifelong learning이 필요하다라고 할 수가 있겠습니다. 이 이제 수명이 길어졌으면 우리가 계속 배워야 하죠. 그런데 이제 그 연자께서 50세 이후에도 배울 준비가 되어 있는가라고 이제 질문을 던지시면서 여러 가지 내용을 설명을 하셨는데요. 당연히 그렇다고 여러분들도 생각을 하실 것 같고요. 그런데 50대 이후의 학습은 개인적인 요소에 의해 영향을 많이 받을 것이다. 그래서 리카르도 씨가 제시한 것 중에 특히 연령과 상관없이 개인이 배우고자 하는 동기가 굉장히 중요하다고 생각이 됩니다. 했던 일, 익숙한 일, 이런 일들을 계속하는 지속성은 그 노화에 적응하는 데 굉장히 중요합니다. 그리고 동기 입장에서 본다면 아까 이제 애티튜드냐, 애프티튜드냐라고 말씀하셨는데 그런 동기 입장에서 본다면 태도, 애티튜드가 맞는 것 같습니다. 또 이제 미래의 고용자들은 노인 인구가 많아지기 때문에 세대 간의 관계를 고려해야 할 것이다라고 이제 말씀하셨는데요. 그래서 예를 들어서 그 인간 발달과 노화, 뭐 휴먼 디벨롭먼트 앤 에이징 이런 것들은 사실 저희가 이제 대학에서 뭐 선택 과목으로 가르치고 하긴 하지만 이런 것들이 참 교과 과정에 어릴 때부터 포함이 되어서 연령에 관계없이 나이가 들면 이렇구나, 나이가 들면 여러 가지 변화가 생기는구나 하면 그 세대 간에 이해하는 데도 훨씬 더 도움이 될 것 같습니다. 그래서 이제 기대 사회와 anticipatory socialization인데요. 이런 것들을 통해서 늘어나는 기대 수명, 변화하는 인간의 환경에 잘 적응할 수 있을 것이라고 생각합니다. 그래서 미래의 교육의 가장 큰 목적이 변화하는 기대 수명, 또 환경의 변화 등에 적응해야 한다는 이 발표 내용에 전적으로 동의를 하고요. 이것이 곧 노년기를 성공적으로 보내는 것이 될 것이라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 고령화 시대의 평생 학습과 리저를 통한 적응으로 성공적인 노화가 가능하리라고 생각을 합니다. 이제 한 가지 좀 질문이 있는데요. 그 학습에 대한 연령 기준을 왜 50으로 잡으셨는지 굉장히 궁금하고요. 그 잡 트레이닝 도표를 보면 35세가 가장 피크인데 아까 또 생물학적인 거 뭐 심리적인 인지적인 거 조금 설명을 하셨는데 왜 50세를 기준으로 이렇게 분석을 하셨는지 좀 궁금합니다. 예, 이상입니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Now is the time for you for your questions. I think we had two fascinating presentations and two, I think, very constructive discussions. I think we have a lot of issues on the table. Actually, we've got already one question from Professor Kim, but I want to open the floor to you. You can speak in Korean or in English, and who wants to ask the first question? Yes, please. Please use the microphone and tell us who you are and who you want the answer from.
Yes, my name is Im Jung-yeon by Soongsil University, and nice to meet you, Professor Kisung. Yes, the policy to delay the retire age longer, and the negative influences for the good. For the young are more serious. And so, Ricardo, yes. Do you have a good idea between empowering the welfare policy and enlarging the labor market for the old people?
Because all the governments want to enlarge or to the retirement age. And that's a problem because we have a very high level of youth unemployment, and at the same time, the older individuals retiring later, we have a problem in the labor market because the older individuals don't permit to the younger one to access to the labor market. The balance between that thing is very complicated. It's very complicated because it's probably one of the problem of Spain. We have the highest level probably in Europe after Greece of the youth unemployment. But at the same time, our government want to enlarge the retired age. It's complicated. I have no other solution, sorry.
But actually, I think this is a really good question. At the same time,
OECD have the
Yeah, no, we don't have the answer either, but I think we shouldn't make the mistake of treating this as a zero-sum game. You know, we keep somebody longer in work, and therefore we have to cut somebody else's chances. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that suggests, you know, the more people you actually have in productive life, the more possibilities and opportunities you can create. I mean, but I think it's a delicate, you know, it's a really issue for public policy. You know, where do you put your investment? In the training, in the welfare, in the early stages of people, in the later stages of people, and getting that balance right is key. And shifting that balance when populations age. I mean, we sort of need to face the change in the reality in which public policy works. And so I think it's a really good point with no easy answer, obviously.
This morning, one person from Switzerland said that it's important, I think, for the young people to go to the labor market. It's important to start from the beginning, to have interest in the labor market, and not to stop the young people. No, wait. No, start early, and it's easier. And in all the countries with the dual system, the level of youth unemployment is very low. It's very low, the unemployment. That's the same in Germany, the same in Austria, it's the same in Switzerland.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, please.
네, 안녕하십니까. 경민대학교 김연원 교수라고 하는데요. 아까 리카르도 기사도 씨한테 묻는 건데요. 지금 아까 말씀하셨을 때 스페인에 있는 분들은 그 나이 들어서 재정적으로 풍부하면 일하지 않을 것이라고 이렇게 말씀하셨습니다. 우리나라는 그렇지 않습니다. 저희 나라는 돈이 있어도 재정적으로 풍부해도 일을 하고 싶어하는 그런 상황에 처해 있습니다. 그래서 이 실제로 평생 학습을 연구하는 사람들은 이들을 어떻게 학습 프로그램에 이끌어 드릴 것인가에 대해서 고민을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 스페인은 어떤지 한번 듣고 싶습니다.
To engage the old people in lifelong learning, the best way is to start earlier. All the statistics say that the people who receive the people are very prepared, want to be better prepared. And if you want to, it's a mechanism. You mustn't stop them. You mustn't stop it. It's the best way to engage the old people in learning is to start at the beginning and continue in the process of all the life. It's lifelong learning forever. We cannot start. If you start when you are older, it's a problem. It's very difficult. It's the best. The best thing is to start earlier.
Other questions? Yes, please, over there.
네, 한국어로 하겠습니다. 우리 사회에서는 사회 참여가 책임과 권한과 의무 이 세 가지 3등가의 원칙에 의해서 활동하게 되는데, 그러니까 책임과 권한과 의무 이것이 똑같아야 되는데 사회에서 책임과 의무는 감당하게 하고 참여하는 권한은 제한한다든가 또 무시한다든가 이러면 안 되지 않습니까? 거기에 대해서 아까 전혀 논의가 안 된 것 같아서 말씀드립니다. 예를 들어서 일반 사회라든가 일반 단체라든가 종교단체라든가 정치단체, 정치에도 모두 참정권 투표는 하는데 나중에 책임과 이런 데 대해서는 자꾸 소외시키고 이런 데 대한 연구와 또 이 말씀에 안겨 있어 그래서 좀 묻습니다. 종교단체도 마찬가지고.
Question. Who wants to talk to that?
Thank you for your question. I think it is necessary for us to understand and recognize the issue of the aging society as the structural problems, I think. I mean that we had to make the effort to any problems of this aging society. For example, what government should do, and what a company or union should do, and what shall we do as the family member, or what shall we do as community members. And so aging society issue is not a political issue, I think, but a social issue. I think. That's why we had to participate in the community activity voluntarily or monetary. Both is okay. So it is very important things. And of course, in Japan, there are many duties in the community, and there are many customs in our community. But in addition to this, we had to participate in the community actively and positively. I think it's my opinion.
And one last question. Yes, please.
My name is Cho Yoon-kyung. I'm studying HRD at Incheon National University, and I'm senior. I just want to ask the way how to improve the motivation of aged people, because motivation is the most important thing for learning or education, but actually it's really hard to motivate even child. But aged people are very conservative, and they don't want to improve, or they don't want to change actually. Now, how can we motivate them?
Interesting question. I mean, the data that we saw from Japan actually suggests the opposite. In fact, the desire of that we saw in your slides, the desire of older people to learn actually seemed to increase, actually, as people get older. It's maybe a mix of, opportunities and motivation. But I'll pass the question back to Sasai-san. I mean, you may have an answer to that.
Do you have any specific?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is the continuity of learning, or continuity of activity is very important. It's the key point of the, in this case, it's attitude on the behavior, something like that. Fortunately, Japanese people has potentially have the good attitude for their learning activities. That's why we promote or emerge to the real communities to these activities.
Yes. Sure, yes. Also to know how the older people learn is different from the young people. It's important, as I mentioned, to know that difficulties for older people, like anxiety, and it's very important for all people, the recognition of their experience, and it's also important for older people to have a clear objective of the learning. I think it's also important a precise definition of the training in action, a different method that for the young people. But in general, older people have received a good training before are motivated to receive more training, but with a clear objective. And why? Because they receive the learning or the training.
Thank you very much. And I think one part of the puzzle is probably the employers, to provide opportunities for people to grow in their careers, to keep people learning. Some people say, and I heard this here as well, as an employer, it's not difficult to invest in somebody's skills because then they leave the job and go somewhere else. But there is only one thing that you can do worse than training people and lose them, and that is not to train them and keep them. So I think this is a really important agenda where maybe in another discussion we should focus on, what can the labor market do to actually facilitate the lifelong learning. I thank you all, our speakers, our discussants, and you for your questions. Thank you very much.